The first thing Hannah Carter noticed was the sound, the faint, relentless clicking coming from a machine that wasn't supposed to be making any noise at all. It was past midnight at the quiet military hospital in rural Virginia, the kind of place where silence usually wrapped around the halls like a blanket. But that night, something was wrong. Something invisible, dangerous, and terrifying was already spreading through the air, and Hannah, a rookie nurse on her third week, was the only one paying attention. If you believe that kindness, courage, and second chances still matter in this world, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stories like this remind us how one ordinary person can stand against extraordinary darkness. Hannah had always been the kind of person who noticed small details. Growing up in a modest home in Ohio, she learned early that quiet observation often revealed truths others overlooked. Her mother used to say that God gave her a watchful heart, and Hannah carried that belief with her into nursing. Still, nothing in her training had prepared her for what she was about to face that night. The patient had arrived under heavy escort, no name, no background, just a designation, military priority. The man was unconscious, his skin pale with a strange, almost grayish tint. 2 officers stood outside his room at all times, their expressions hard and unreadable. The hospital staff had been instructed to treat him without asking questions. For most, that was enough. But not for Hannah. As she entered the room for her routine check, she noticed the Geiger counter in the corner. It wasn't standard equipment for a patient room, yet there it was, quietly ticking. At first, she thought it was malfunctioning. Then the sound grew faster. Sharper. Alive. Her heart began to pound as she stepped closer to the patient. Every instinct in her body told her to step back, to call someone, to pretend she hadn't seen anything. But instead, she leaned in, studying the man's chart. His vitals were unstable, fluctuating in ways that didn't make sense. His skin showed faint burns, patterns that didn't resemble anything she had seen before. Radiation. The realization hit her like ice water. Hannah stumbled back, her breath catching in her throat. This wasn't just a sick patient. This was something classified. Something dangerous. And everyone else was pretending it was normal. The next few hours felt like a blur. She tried to report her concerns to her supervisor, a senior nurse named Rebecca Collins, but Rebecca's reaction was immediate and cold. She told Hannah to stop asking questions and focus on her duties. There was a sharp edge in her voice, the kind that warned of consequences. That should have been the end of it. But Hannah couldn't let it go. As dawn approached, she returned to the patient's room, drawn by something she couldn't explain. The clicking of the Geiger counter was louder now, almost frantic. The man's condition had worsened. His breathing was shallow, his body trembling slightly as if fighting an invisible war. Hannah's hands shook as she adjusted his fore. She felt a strange mix of fear and compassion. Whoever he was, whatever had happened to him, he was still a human being. He deserved care. He deserved someone to see him, not just the threat he represented. That was when the doors burst open. 3 men in dark suits entered, their presence immediately suffocating the room. They didn't introduce themselves. They didn't need to. Everything about them, their posture, their cold eyes, the authority in their silence, made it clear. The FBI had arrived. Hannah stepped back instinctively, her pulse racing. One of the men, tall with graying hair, looked directly at her. His gaze was piercing, almost calculating. He asked her what she had seen, his tone calm but heavy with expectation. For a moment, Hannah considered lying. It would have been easier. Safer. But something inside her refused. She told him everything. The Geiger counter. The burns. Her suspicions. The room fell silent. The man exchanged a glance with his colleagues before turning back to her. There was something different in his expression now, not anger, but concern. What Hannah didn't realize at the time was that her honesty had just placed her in the center of something far bigger than she could imagine. The patient, whose name was later revealed as Thomas Grant, had been part of a covert military operation involving experimental technology. An accident had exposed him to extreme levels of radiation. The government had been trying to contain the situation quietly, to avoid panic, to control the narrative. And now, a rookie nurse had uncovered it. In the hours that followed, Hannah was escorted to a private room and questioned repeatedly. The agents weren't cruel, but they were relentless. They wanted to know who she had told, what she had documented, whether she had contacted anyone outside the hospital. The implication was clear. They were deciding what to do with her. Hannah felt fear like she had never known before. Not just for herself, but for her family, her future, everything she had worked for. She was just a nurse. She had never wanted to be a hero. But as she sat there, alone and trembling, she thought of the man in that hospital bed. Of the way his body had been breaking down, of the way everyone else had looked away. And she realized something. Silence would make her complicit. When the agents returned, she spoke with a quiet strength that surprised even her. She told them that the truth mattered. That people had a right to know. That Thomas Grant wasn't just a liability, he was a person who deserved dignity, even in his final moments. For a long time, no one said anything. Then the older agent sighed, his expression softening just slightly. He told her that the world wasn't as simple as she believed. That sometimes, protecting people meant keeping secrets. But he also admitted something unexpected. That her courage mattered. Instead of silencing her, the FBI made a different choice. They placed her under strict confidentiality, but they also ensured that Thomas received proper care in a specialized facility. More importantly, they launched an internal review of the operation that had led to his condition. Hannah wasn't erased. She was heard. The days that followed were difficult. She returned to her routine, but nothing felt the same. The hospital halls seemed quieter, heavier with unspoken truths. Yet there was also a sense of purpose she hadn't felt before. She had stood her ground. She had made a difference. Weeks later, she received a letter. It was brief, unsigned, but unmistakably from someone within the agency. It thanked her for her integrity. It told her that Thomas Grant had passed peacefully, with dignity. And it ended with a simple line. People like you remind us why the truth still matters. Hannah sat with the letter for a long time, tears quietly falling down her cheeks. Not from sadness alone, but from something deeper. A sense of meaning. Of knowing that even in a world filled with shadows, one person's light could still shine through. Before we reach the end of this story, I want to ask you something special. Drop a comment below and share one moment when you chose courage over fear, no matter how small it seemed. Hannah's journey didn't make headlines. There were no awards, no public recognition. But in the quiet corners of that hospital, in the lives she continued to touch, her courage lived on. And maybe that's what true heroism looks like. Not grand gestures or dramatic victories, but small, brave choices made in moments when it would be easier to look away. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of kindness and standing up for what's right, please take a moment to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because stories like Hannah's deserve to be told, and remembered.